What's up, guys? This is Nick from JangaFX, and this is our second visual effects tutorial ever, I think, for casual visual effects that isn't our software. What you see here is fully volumetric fog. This is for ground fog, clouds, if you wanted to display like a terrain height map or something on some kind of visual map in a case or something as an effect, which I might do a tutorial on that portion a bit later. As you can see, this is volumetric fog. I'm going to teach you how to make this. You can see that there are some issues with this method where there are various planes and lines and such, but I promise this is super easy. It's unbelievably easy for incredible quality. You can see that we're running at 8.33 milliseconds with this. In any normal scene, this should be absolutely performant for you depending on how many layers you're using. This is 50 slices. You can do a lower resolution of 25 slices. So I'll do BP Volumetrics just to show you. So we'll do 25, and so even lower resolution still looks just as good. There might be a little bit more banding on the boxes or whatever is in your map, but for the most part, this is the most it's the best method I've ever seen for fog. It's something that I developed myself, came up with it over the weekend, and just had to share it because I needed it for something. So if you want toxic gas, cryogenic smoke, anything, the sky is the limit on this. I'm going to show just some basic stuff for you and how to create this, but there's so much power behind this, and I hope you guys enjoy the tutorial. Okay guys, the first thing we want to do to create this fog is we want to create the material that will actually be the backbone to the fog. After we create the material, we will create the blueprint, and from there we should start being able to tweak the fog and tweak it to our liking to fill this room, and we'll see how it goes from there. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into my content browser. I'm going to add a new folder, call that JangaFX, and I want to go ahead and create a new material, and we'll call this poisonous gas. Hopefully that's how you spell poisonous. Okay, and if it's not, I'll just be safe and I'll say volumetric gas. So there we go. It's a volumetric gas, and let's go ahead and open this shader. And the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a texture to create this awesome fog. And so we're going to hop on into Photoshop, and if you have Substance Designer, I'm sure you can do something very similar. So I'm going to drag this over. We'll create a 1024 by 1024. I'm going to go to Render, Clouds. I think that's good enough. And then I want to go to Filter Gallery, and if you've seen my last tutorial, you know that I like to use the Paint Daubs filter. You could just keep your brush size maybe 25. I think that'll be pretty fair. Change the brush type to sparkle, and you can keep sharpness on 0. We're going to click OK. We might want to apply a slight blur to this. So we can go blur, Gaussian blur, and we'll do 1 pixel. And that'll just kind of smooth out some of the hard edges if there were any. Now we want to go to Filter, Other, and Offset. And we want to offset it by 512, 512 since it's a 1024 texture. And we can see that we have some seams here. And we're just going to get rid of some of these seams with the smudge tool. And so I'm just going to lightly click my mouse here and just kind of jiggle it until things smoothen out and that line disappears. Just like that. And kind of go in the vertical axis here where it's needed. Something like that. And then we've got a little bit more that we need to smudge down here. Don't wiggle it too much because your pixels will shift too much and you might see like some color banding. I'm not sure what it's called, but you might see like some color banding and rainbows and stuff. Like, I don't know if I can show you. It's not quite doing it, but there's like some purples and greens and such in there, and you just don't want it to be distorted too much. Now we want to go to filter and offset again and just check it for any imperfections. That looks like an absolute perfect tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and save it in a noise folder that I have, and I'm going to call this volume gas, or let's see, FXT volume gas. We'll save that as a PNG. There we go. I think that's fair enough. And now we can close Photoshop. I'm going to go to my JangaFX folder here. And it looks like I created it in maps. Whoops. From here, I'm going to go to my data, VFX, textures, and noise. And here we go. I've got my volume gas. I'm going to go ahead and take the time to save all. And from here, I'm going to click on that and hold texture sample. Go ahead and, which that did not drag in, which is okay. Okay, there we go. And now I just want to keep this where it's at. And we're going to want to plug this into base color and emissive color. And then I want to make it additive, default lit. That's fine. Actually, I want to make it translucent, default lit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to build out some custom panner tools so that we have complete control over how this is working. And we actually want to multiply these two textures by each other. So we'll go here, multiply, and we'll take this. Actually, I did this wrong. Here we go. Multiply that. Break this link. We'll multiply this by 2. And we'll see how it looks. And now we can plug this into base color and this into emissive. And let's do live nodes, live updates. Make sure that our viewport is real time. And there we go. We've got that. And now what we want to do is, first off, we want to create the, and I'll only have one texture coordinate for now. So what we want to do first is create the ability to change the tiling of this inside of our material instance that we're going to use. So I'm going to plug this in, and I'm going to hold S on my keyboard, and it's going to spam a name for me, and I'm going to call this noise 1 tile. And I'm not going to make it tile in each independent axis. I'm just going to do tiling as a whole in both U and V, or X and Y, whatever you prefer. And then the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to make it so that we can offset these coordinates and pan them on each separate axis, or on separate U and V. So I'm going to go ahead and do a component mask, and I'm going to hold that as R. Then I'm going to control V to paste it. I'm going to check the green channel, and from here what I'm going to do is I want to offset these two things. So we want to offset the UVs in each part, and then what we want to do in the end is we want to append these. So we want to append them just like that. And we want to plug that into UVs. And now we want to hold S again, and we're going to call this noise 1, or we can call it N1 if we wish, but we'll keep it consistent. Noise 1 pan X, or U. I'll just say X because that's easier for me to recognize. And we'll plug those two in just like that. And I'll paste this, and I'll change this to say noise 1 pan Y. And we can capitalize this for consistency. Capitalize this pan for consistency. Just like that. And now I'm going to change this tile default value to 1. And I'm going to change my default value here to maybe 0.1. Change that to 0.1. And that should be panning. Oh, the reason it's not panning is I need a time node, of course. And we want to multiply these two together. There we go. Go ahead and paste that. We want to multiply these two together. We can even these out. Drag that back. Plug that into there. Something like that. And now we have built our own custom panner with X and Y controls and a way to tile our texture. And we can test that and see that it does indeed tile correctly. So we're going to go ahead and apply this and save it. And then we want to move this up a bit. Control C, Control V, and paste it. And then we want to do noise to pan X, noise to pan Y, and then noise to tile. And we're going to plug that in. We're going to right click on the texture sample, convert each one to a parameter. I'm going to call this noise 1. Oh, it's not going to let me. Noise 1. I'm going to take this noise 2, just like that, and I'm going to make this a default of 1, and we'll leave it at that. And once again, let's go ahead and save this. Alright, and so now it's time to get into the point where we need to remap this noise texture and map it from 0 to 1 based on the resolution and slice height that we want for our volumetrics. So our volumetrics, they're going to be rendered in slices. So we're going to take a bunch of planes and layer them on top of each other. 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever the resolution you have a budget for in your game. And we're going to say what is the percentage of the height values. So say if it's starting at 0 and going to 256 in height, we want to take that and clamp it down or remap it down to a 0-1 range so that we can subtract. And so test subtract. And so I'll just test subtract and I'll show you how we're going to dissolve. And let's see, subtract. I don't think subtract has a shortcut. It doesn't. And so there we go. Now I'm going to plug this into, actually I'm not going to subtract those. I'm just going to subtract the opacity here. And we're going to take this out and plug it onto a plane here. So we'll do this. And then I'm going to drag my volumetric gas onto it. And from here, I'm going to just slide this value. Oh, this sort priority, wrong value. So you can see that as I slide the values, it fades away. And so we're going to use that as our method. And so we're going to have a custom node that will drive this subtraction in particular. Okay. So from here, we want to right click and create a custom node. We're going to call this volume remap. And in my little notepad file, I have some math for us. I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but you can work out this equation. It's quite simple. And we're basically saying we're going to declare our float value, which is going to be volume A. And this is what we're going to return as the subtracted value and plug this return value into subtraction. And so we're going to take our cloud layer, which actually this should say volume A. So there was some mistake that we already avoided. So we're going to take volume A, and it's going to equal min2 plus parentheses max2 minus min2 blah blah blah. And basically what we're doing is min2 is the minimum value between 0 and 1 that we want to map to. Max2 is the maximum value between 0 and 1 that we want to map to. Slice height is going to be the current slice's height inside of our blueprint. So whenever we're offsetting heights, this right here is going to be, this info is going to be fed to the material. And then we have our minimum from, which is going to be the base height of the seed plane and world space. And by whenever I say the seed plane, so if this is up, and if we scroll up and see, the location is going to be 110. And then if we want to set the maximum height for our slices, so let's see, what is that max from? This max from is going to be that base location of 110, and say we want a height of 50, we're going to add 50 to that, and then our maximum height for this fog volume will be between 110 units and 160 units, since our height that we want is 50. And so basically you can see that if we have a minimum height of, or a current height in our plane of 200, we're going to subtract it to our what do you call it, our min from value, and so that's going to be 0. So our base location is going to be at 0 for our seed plane. We have a plane that's at 200 in local space, and our maximum height is 256, and so of course we're going to subtract 0 again, which we can see right here, which is our minimum from, and that's going to be 78%. And so that 0.78 is going to carry over into our subtract. But of course we have a little bit more math so that we can remap it more efficiently, because not all values will be 0. And so in this case, it's going to be 0.78 times 1, essentially, which is going to be that. And so this value will be remapped to 0.78. But in this case down here, the ending value after we subtract 10, because our base seed height was 10 centimeters in world location, it ends up coming out to this. So we divide these two, 190 by 246, and you can see that after doing this little equation right here, we come up with 0.81. So 0.81 would be ended up plugged into our subtraction B. Hopefully I didn't lose you guys and you're still with me. It will all make sense in just a second. So I'm going to copy this particular thing. You can see I was doing some research on how it works particularly. And so I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go here to our code. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to make our output type CMOT float. I'm not sure what CMOT means. I just know that we want to output a single float value. And then we're going to need some inputs. And so since we don't declare any of these other variables, we need to declare them down here in our input section. So I'm going to expand all. Our first input is going to be min2. And so I will show you here. So we're going to do min2, max2, min from. And so I'm going to just pull this over to my screen so I can read it. Okay, so we've got min2. We're going to have a new one, and we're going to call that max2. We're going to create another one. We're going to call that min from. I'm going to do another one here, and we're going to call this max from. And then our last one is going to be slice height. Okay, so there we go. And now what we want to do is, now that we have all these values, we want to create custom parameters again. And by the way, I'm holding S on my keyboard and clicking. I'm not sure if I said that for the others. So we have our custom parameter, and we're just going to call this, once again, min2. I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to say max, oh, come on, max2. I'm going to copy and paste again. I'm going to call this min from, copy and paste. We're going to call this max from, and then, oh, wrong thing. Copy and paste again. And I could just paste the nodes, but I'm going to call this slice height. And from here, what I want to do is I want to plug the min2 into the min2 option. I want to plug the max2 in the max2 option. Then I want to get a object position WS, and I want to mask out Z. So we want to bring in a component mask, and B in this case, so RBG B. B is the Z axis, and you can see that Z is blue here, just in case you don't remember the colors for what it is. And so we have that, and I'm actually going to plug this object position into slice height, and so I don't think that we need this slice height parameter, so that goes there. And then of course we have our min from, which is going to plug directly into this, and I'm going to call this min from and BP, so that we know that we're going to reference that in a blueprint. And then I'm going to call this max from, and I'll call this BP as well, so that we know that we're going to reference this value from a BP. And so if we want a slice that is 256 high, and so let's say we've got this, it's at 100, and we want the maximum height to be 100 centimeters above this height. We need to know to take this initial object position and add it to this one, okay, so that we know to set it at 200, because otherwise it might be somewhere else and it's just not going to work out right. And so we're going to add the minimum height that we get from the blueprint, and then we're going to take that and plug the max BP in, and we're going to do that. And so now it is taking into account our proper offsets. And now I'm just going to grab this, and we're going to bring it up here. And sorry that I'm working in a smaller window. I completely foresight. Going to plug that into subtract. And now if we just do an example and we say our max2 is 1, and then we want to do our min from and our max from, let's just say that this is 256 by default. And I'm going to apply here. And now from here, I want to bring this down. And so since we've applied it, we should be able to see. Yeah, so as we raise our, and actually let me raise this multiplier here. And we might need a new material, I'm not sure yet, or a new texture, sorry. We'll see how it plays out. And so I'm going to delete this plane. We can see that now as we move this up, the height shrinks out, right? And now what we're going to do is we're basically going to duplicate the planes all the way up, and I'm actually going to go into my material again here, and I'm going to change this to 50 to test it better. And actually I didn't need to apply that. So now we just have this, and we can see that it would fade out really quickly. And so if we do this, and sorry for the jitter there, and I'm just duplicating a bunch, we can kind of see how, which is kind of bad, it's actually terrible, horrible, 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 horrible. Let me see, is it plane 10, plane 9? Nope, it must be plane 7. I don't know, but I done screwed up. That's what it did by putting it inside the map. Okay, so it's plane 14. It's kind of weird. Sorry that my phone vibrated if you heard that. Plane 14. And I'm just going to bring this up. Okay, so now we kind of get the gist of what's happening and how it's going to work and how we're going to layer this stuff. The next portion is, and we're going to come back to the material in a little bit to add some more tweaks, give us a lot more control over it. But first, let's go ahead and get the actual volume rendering inside of our room here. So I'm going to go to my content folder here. I'm going to right click, a new blueprint class. We're going to bring in an actor. We're going to call this Volumetrics. And we probably want to name this, I like to just do BP, just so that it's not confusing in case I name something else, Volumetrics. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this into the world and place it something like that. And now let's go ahead and dive into the blueprint portion. So I'm going to go ahead and add a component. We're going to add a plane as our default here. And I'm going to go to my volumetric gas and I'm going to create a material instance. We can just call it the instance like that. That's completely fine. Let's go ahead and save all if you haven't, so that if we crash, we still have all of our stuff. Water break for a second. Okie doke. Now, here we go. So we're going to take our material and I'm going to find volume and I'm going to spawn that instance right there. And we can leave this at the size that it currently is. This is completely okay. We're going to save that. And now inside of our event graph, we're going to drag our plane in. And the first thing we want to do is we want to get our material. The reason we want to get the material is so that we have a material to reference to create a dynamic instance. And we can plug in, which let me go ahead and plug this in so that goes away. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete these other two because we don't need them. So we'll plug this in. And of course we can plug in our plane as well. So we can do this, kind of make it pretty so that it's not total spaghetti. And now we want to take this and we want to do parameter. And so we want to set a scalar value. And if we go into our volumetric gas setting, sorry, no, yeah, it is volumetric gas. I thought I was saying something stupid. So volumetric gas, and we want to just copy this min from, okay, and we want to, I can't paste it in here. There we go. So in our parameter name, we want to paste in the min from, and the min from is going to be the get transform, which we don't need to get the world transform. We can get just the world location. Get world location. And I'm going to split the struct pin. And by the way, if you didn't know that you could do that, that is one of the most helpful things I've ever learned in blueprints, is that you can split struct pins, which I don't know if you could do it for that. Nope, you can't. And you can break it out into their individual values. And so we're going to plug this into that. And so that is our base value that we're going to be using here. And then of course, we want to copy this. We want to plug that in. I'm going to plug in this dynamic instance, of course, into that. And we're going to call this, I believe it is max from BP. Nope. That was about to be a mistake. Max from BP. And this maximum is going to be this value right here. And actually no, because it's already going to add it for us. So that would be another mistake here. And so it's already going to do the adding for us right here. We could have done the adding inside of here, which might be a little bit cleaner since that could be the math. But I'm just going to plug in a new variable. And so we're going to call this layer height. And we could do that. We could call it desired layer height or whatever we want here. And I'm going to check this box so that it's instance editable inside of our actual level. We're going to drag that in. We're going to get it. And I think there's a shortcut. Is it control? Yeah. So if you just hold control and drag, you don't have to do the whole get thing. and it'll just plop right in. We want to compile it, because since I don't think I did, and now we can edit our layer height, and we're just going to set a default to maybe 50, and we'll leave that at that. Now we want to make another variable, and this is going to be the number of slices that we want. So we'll just say volume resolution. So something like that. We want to make it an integer, which actually we could make it a float so that we don't have to, actually no, we do need to make an integer for something we're going to do in the future. So we're just going to get the volume resolution, and we're going to create a for loop, and we're going to do the for loop, not for each loop. So we want to do the flow control. The first index is going to be 0. Our last index is going to be the volume resolution, and by default we'll set the volume resolution at 25. And then we want to add a new static component out of the loop body. So for every loop we're going to add a new static mesh component, just like this. And since I don't have a plane of my own, I'm going to go down to View Options, Show Engine Content, Plane, and we should see it right here. You can see that down at the bottom it will say Engine Basic Shapes and then Plane, and we've got that. And now we want to do inst, oh that's a bad thing, volume inst, just like that. And now from here we want to break this relative transform, and then we want to break the location again, and so split it, which I think did one say break and then one said split? That could be kind of confusing, but you break the transform into multiple things, and then you can split singular variables, so this would say split as well. From here what we want to do is we want to take, and actually we need another variable, and so we're going to need previous layer height, and we're going to set this as a float, just like that. And we want to make our volume resolution editable as well. We're going to get this right here, and so I believe that we don't need to set the previous layer height at first. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the volume resolution by our desired layer height, and you know what, I think I'm going to call this volume height to be a little more consistent, because it's not the layer height, it's the volume height. And we want to take the volume height, let me just do some math here. So if our volume height is going to be 256, and we divide that by a resolution of 25, that means every 10.24 inches, so, hey, it's kind of like 1024. So every 10.24 centimeters, there we go, every 10.24 centimeters, we want to spawn a new static mesh to match our 256. And so once again, if we do 10.24 by 256, that will equal that thing, which I don't think that was right. But anyway, let's not worry about it. Embarrassing myself here. So we want to divide our volume height, and we will just say float by float. We'll plug that in. It'll automatically convert this integer to a float. And then we want to say previous layer height as our thing. And actually, we want to add float to a float. So we're going to take this right here. Oh, it's messing me up. We're going to plug that in, and then we're going to plug this in. And so what we're doing is we're getting our volume height, and we know that this is going to be an output of 10.24 if we're shooting for a total volume height of 256. We're going to take our previous volume height, and so to do that we do set we're going to set our previous volume height, which actually I like to do it after just in case to absolutely ensure that I'm doing this right. And so we go here and we take our previous layer height, add it, and then we set our new volume height from here. And so we do that. Nope. We're going to add this into there. And I believe that will do it for us. And now what we want to do is we want to take this return value and we want to create material instance just like that. And I want to plug this in and I want to get material. So we're going to get our material just like we did last time. And another thing, collision. We're going to turn collision off while we're at it. And we're going to go to our main plane as well. And we're going to turn collision off. That's just so that if you have a character that can walk through this stuff, which presumably you can, your character won't be walking on top of solid planes. Okay, so from here we create our instance. We want to grab these two variables right here. And we want to plug this in just like that. And so do we need to set these? Not sure yet. Let me think for a second here. And something is broken. I'm going to grab this and there we go. These two plug in here. I'm pretty sure that I do something with these, but just give me a second here. And so let's go ahead and test this magic thing. And so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to drag our blueprint into the world, which what I had might have been the blueprint. I can't recall. And if we go into our volume height, we can see that we're going to have a volume height of 50, a resolution of 0.25, and excuse the music here. Let me go to audio, and I'm going to turn all this audio off. And that didn't work. So what we need to do is we do need to set this, and so because we want to get each plane's height, and so the max from is going to be this volume height option. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in. And then our min from, so this is what our current height is. And so I think that we want to get world location. We want to split this and we want to plug that in there to get the current height. And now if we hit play, now we can see that something is indeed happening. And so we want to do our minimum as this value right here. So I'm actually going to promote it to a variable. I'm going to call it seed height. Yeah, HEIGHT. Sorry, brain fart. And so I'm going to set that just like that, and I'll move these things back. And once again, I'm doing the small window thing again. Okay, I'm gonna bring this back, bring that back, plug in our seed height. And I might be doing this wrong, but I don't think I am. Okay, so we've got our minimum and then our volume, and because actually what we want to do is we have a relative location and we want to get our object height, and so okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. This should work. Okay, yep, it worked. And so now we can see that our little volume is creating some nice little spikes, some volumetric stuff. Sorry once again for the music. I am back. I have solved it. There was a sound cue that I had to remove. And so now we can see here that we have some pretty nice little volumetrics going on. You can see that there is a problem whenever we get low enough to it, but hopefully your player won't have that issue. So now we want to scale this up maybe by like 4. Nope, maybe we want to do 40. Let's see, 40, something like that. And nope, that's too big. So we'll do 20 and 20. And that looks pretty good to me. We'll bring this over a little bit more. So it's kind of like this. And here we go. We're going to play again. And now we can kind of see that we've got some volumetric stuff coming through. But one of the things that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go back into Photoshop, I believe. And we'll see if we can kind of fix this up. Open recent. Oh, come on. Open recent. Volume gas. And I'm going to kind of maximize these values a little bit so that they're mapped completely through. I'm going to go do save as, and I'm going to go back to my volume gas. I'm going to save over it, and hopefully this will help. And by the way, I hit Control L, changed my layers slider so that it's mapped to 255 a little bit better. And now I'm going to go to my volume gas, and I'm going to re-import it. Now we can see that it is a little bit better. And inside of our material instance, we can start tweaking some things. And so I'm going to click my material instance, and it's going to be kind of hard since our tutorial only shows one screen here, but we can kind of work from it. And so let's go ahead and check all these boxes on, just like that. And let's go ahead and plug this over like that, and I think that's pretty good. And from here, we want to say our max from BP. That doesn't matter because those are blueprint values, but our max 2 can be changed, and you can see that we can make it like 0.2, and it'll kind of affect the way that the height is. We can change our min to, so maybe it comes from 0.5 only. Zeros will get all your extra stuff in there. We can change our noise to be like 0.5. Say 0.5 for noise 1. Our noise 1 tile is up 0.05, and maybe I'll do 0.01. And so let's slow this stuff down way much. And then for our noise tile, maybe I'll do 0.2 or something. 0.5 is probably good enough. And then for our noise pan, maybe I'll do like negative 0.5 and 0.01 or something like that. And that's a little bit too contradicting. Maybe I'll do 2 as our noise pan right there. So we have a little bit more noise coming through. And hopefully, I think with what I'll do next, we'll kind of get some of these values to fill out more so that it looks a little better. I think we can do that. So from here, we can just kind of play with these a little bit more later. But let me change my noise pan. So let's see, like negative 0.1 or something. There we go. Nope, so I need to do my pan X 0.1. So something like that. So now things are kind of moving in the same direction. We've got some cool stuff. We've got things kind of going through. We've got some little clouds and whatever. So let's go ahead and browse to the content browser and save all. And there we go. And now what we want to do is we're going to go back into the material and start editing some more things. So I'm going to hold down 3 on my keyboard. I'm going to convert it to a parameter. This is our color. And so we'll say color, just like that. And we could do it on a per noise basis, but I'm not really going to bother with that. And so we can go from here, and I'll say we're going to multiply this just like that. And actually we can, no, I'll just drag it in manually. So we can plug that in and plug this into base color, plug this into emissive. And then right here, we also want to bring in something called Beer's Law. And this is going to give our clouds some depth. And so we want to do, we'll say depth like that. And this will give our clouds a lot of thickness. And we'll say a default of maybe 5, something like that. And now we can multiply this color, and we'll make our default color maybe like a cold blue, or maybe like a green, something toxic, something like that. And we'll see how it looks from here. And let me just start previewing this node so that we can see. And it kind of does some cool stuff there. Stop previewing, and let's preview that. And then we can see our subtract is doing good. I'm not sure why it's black right there. It shouldn't be inside of our game, I wouldn't think. So we've got our volumetric gas, and now you can see that things are a little bit thicker. And so now we can activate our depth, and we could do like 1 or 0.2 or 1 or something like that. We'll see. And so we got that, and I'm thinking we need like some more waviness, because this is pretty static looking. So our 0.5 noise, I'll do like 0.1 or something. And that's not really looking like I would hope that it would. We have a lot of, what do you call it, like blank space inside of here. Another thing is, let's go ahead and stop this real quick. And I'm going to go to our blueprint, and I'm going to change our volume height to, yeah, I think 50 is fine actually. And maybe we want to go to our Photoshop here, and I'm going to go to my levels, and I'm actually going to brighten things up a bit. Nope, not going to work for me. Let me just kind of paint over some of these holes or something and see if that right there works. Nah, because that might have done it. I think I can do it through levels. Let me try again. There we go, output levels. And let me just cancel that again. And output levels, something like that, so that it's not so black in the centers, so that it's not as low. And we're going to go back into our thing, re-import it, and now we've got some better stuff going on there, I think. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a much thicker cloud here. It looks like we're having an issue where we're topping off at the top, and I believe that is caused by our high multiplication to make up for what we were doing last time. And so let's just make this 2, and we probably want to saturate this so that we can ensure that it is correct between 0 and 1. And now I'm going to change that, saturate that as well. And then let's go ahead and add a multiply here. This way we can change the opacity as a whole. Just like that. And now we'll see here how this is looking. There we go. We'll pause that and play, and nothing is working because our opacity is 0. We can do like 0.2 or something. And now we have this volume fog that's kind of rolling through. And so what I think we should do is we should make the higher layers slower, and then the big wave that will come through faster. And so we'll do noise 1 pan, which that is our 0.5, so we'll do noise 2 pan, 0.02, something like that. And then we'll do negative 0.1, nope, negative 0.05, negative 0.02 maybe. And that should add some extra stuff to our height there. And maybe we'll do an opacity of 1 so that we can kind of see what's going on here. And we'll add to our depth, maybe make it like 2 or something. And so now we have that. And let me change this color as well. Let's make it a bit deeper or something. Maybe we'll do that. Yeah, so that's a nice thick cloud, and we can maybe do like 0.5 depth, 1. Yeah, I think that 1 is fair enough. And so now we have this. Another thing we could do is grab these volumetrics, and they're currently at 10 above the floor, so yeah, that's fine. And I think that is pretty good, and we can't really see a lot of the motion because of how these boxes are. And so just to play around, we can do like noise tile for number 1. Maybe we could do 3 or 5, 1, 0.2, 0.5, something like that, which is what we had previously. And so we're just kind of tweaking this a bit. And if we look into, and actually maybe we could change our opacity to be even brighter, maybe like 5, 10, to fill in some of these darker spots again. And so, but that is a bit much. And so we'll do like maybe 0.8. And like, let's see what happens if we come in and we change this to a slice of 50. Now we'll have a higher resolution. You can see now on the boxes, there's not as many little lines that are going through that you can see. And we have some nice fog going on. Let's see, is there anything else that we can do to kind of help this out? So let me look at my volumetric material again, just to make sure that we've got everything. So we've got our thickness, then we're multiplying that. We've got our textures that we're panning. We've got our object position. That's all working well. And so we'll just select all these real quick, and we'll say tile and panner, just like that. And we'll select this, and we'll say height mapping, essentially. And then the rest is just kind of whatever it does. Let's see, translucent surface, default lit. I think that's it, essentially. I guess because we're multiplying these things together, they are kind of doing their thing, which, I mean, we could go back here and edit our levels even more. So something like that. And bring it out a little bit more. Save as. We'll save that again. And of course, you know, it's not bad if you have space in between. In this case, I just want it to cover the floor quite a bit. But it's really up to you. You are the artist in this, and you don't have to do it just like I do. So there we go. Now we have more coverage in general. And now we've got some nice undulations here. You know, maybe what we want to do is have a separate channel so that we have a different cloud. And so what we can do is we can go to filter and render clouds, and let's do that. Oh, nope, not Adobe stock. Alt Control F. So we'll do that until I see something that I like. I think that looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then of course I will go to, what do you call it? Filter gallery. Of course, our settings should be the same as last time, but maybe I want to bump this up a bit, or bump it down, make it a little more noisy, perhaps. Okay, so maybe we'll do like 22, sparkle once again. We'll hit OK. I'll go to filter, and we'll blur this just a little bit, 1 pixel, to give it a little bit of extra blur. We're going to offset this, just like we did last time. I'm going to go into my smudge tool, just like this. I'm going to kind of wiggle through it, just like that. And now, what is it? Alt-Control F to offset again, because that does your last filter. And that looks pretty good. And so now I'm going to Control C and copy that. And I'm going to go into the green channel. And come on, let's see if I can paste this. Okay, so I'm going to, oh, nope. So there we go. So I'm going to paste this in green. There we go. And so now we have some extra data. I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save this as a PNG, which I don't know why I did save as, but there we go. And so now we're going to need to make some edits to our stuff. Let me just go ahead and save all once again, just so that we don't lose our progress. And if I go to volumetric gas, I'm going to bring in the red channel on one and the green channel on the other. And now we have two separate things. I'm going to browse for this. I'm going to re-import this texture. And another thing I want to do is I'm going to go and make this a user interface compression setting so that it is uncompressed. And then we can change this to FX, which I don't know if you need to do this, but we'll just call it that. And then I think that there's a maximum size. Yeah, and so we can do a maximum size of maybe 512 and lower the resolution a bit. And I think that still looks fine. And I mean, we could even get away with 256 for this resolution. We'll see how it looks. If it's too gritty, then we'll fix it. But that looks pretty good for 256 to me. And now you can see that we have a little bit more variation in our motion. And I'm going to change our, so it's noise 1 that's like that. And so we'll do maybe 5-2 something. So there we go. Now we have one tiling is 2, another tiling is 2, and they're kind of really interacting together. And you could add as many layers as you wanted to add some more motion to this. If you wanted to take it to the next level, which might be another tutorial, you could have flow maps that have this going around objects and kind of not going through it and kind of swirling around. So you could have some various swirls for all this stuff, and it would look pretty good. And so we've got that, but let's speed it up a little bit. We'll do like -0.1 or something, -0.08, -0.07, something like that. And of course, maybe I want to do 0.1 here, 0.05. There we go. We've got some pretty good wavy motion going on now. And so, of course, we can make this, like, let's say that we wanted to make it kind of more like the lighting in here. We could change these colors. So, or if you want it to be kind of like hot colored. I haven't figured out how to make it colored based on point lights just yet. Maybe I will do that in a future tutorial. I haven't thought that far out. And then I don't know if lighting all this stuff would cause issues. But there is another issue that we do want to address. And it could be addressed in two ways. You could make a mesh that has vertex paint and then or vertex colors and fades the way that it should around the edges of the room or whatever. We could also maybe do like a depth fade, but that would probably be pretty expensive. But what we can do is, yeah, just notice that there is water going down these walls. What a nice touch. So what we can do is we're going to make a radial gradient inside of our, where is it at? Here we go. Inside of our material. And we're going to make this our opacity. And so we're going to do multiply right here at the very end. Plug that into opacity. We'll do radial gradient. And I'm just going to leave it as the default. You could set up your parameters and stuff. I am not going to do that right now. I'm just going to leave it as is. And this will add a radial fade to our stuff here. It's looking like that might have done it a baddie. Okay guys, I had to cut the video for a second because all of the gases inside the room here, they started fading out and it looked really bad and it was really low and it wasn't a very thick fog or anything. And it turns out inside of Photoshop here, if we go to our green channel, remember how we did the Control L layers and changed the output levels? I did the same thing to this green channel just now, boosted the colors so that it wasn't in the blacks like that, and saved it and compiled it and then re-imported it, and that fixed my issue after I did a baddie, as I said. You can see that we have some pretty good rolling fogness here. If we go back to our inst, now we should really see what depth does. And so you can see that it kind of occludes more of the light and gives it some more detail. I believe, guys, that this might be the end of the tutorial. There are some more advanced things that we can do with this. You know, you can make an entire sky out of this kind of thing if you wanted to. There's a way that you can take this and do the reverse so that you have 50 layers and then 50 more layers and make it so that there's a full cloud. Of course, you know, once you go into the volume, you won't really see much, but of course we could go into our material, and I'm not sure if two-sided has a large effect on anything. We'll see. But you can do two-sided planes, and you can do this kind of thing with clouds as well. And so I guess if you wanted to have, you know, fog above you, you could do that same thing. And then of course, luckily we added that opacity parameter so we can make it so that we can still see some of the floor objects. That way all your detail isn't going away. You know, and then let's say that, for instance, we wanted some kind of cinematic, and actually, you know what, I said it was the end of the tutorial, but I got a bonus for you. What we're going to do is I'm going to create a cinematic level sequence real quick. So I'm going to add a level sequence. We'll call this smoke drop in, something like this, and I'm going to do BP Volumetrics, and I'm going to add this to my sequencer. There we go. I'm going to add a track transform, and I'm going to take where it currently is, and so I'm going to do like 170 or something, 160, which actually, you know what, I don't know if this will work, but we'll see. Actually, yeah, so here's what I'll do. I'll spawn it at 10, boom, just like that. The next frame, I will move it up to 170. That way it knows where it was supposed to spawn. And boom, we'll do that. And then down here on like frame 150, we'll drag this down back to our proper height. And we'll set that. And if we go here and we do, what is a cine, or what is this called? What did I just call this? Level sequence. Yeah, smoke drop in, and let's see, autoplay. Will that work? There we go. And so if you're wondering what in the heck happened, let's see if I can add a sphere to the blueprint. And so we'll go to the viewport and we'll just add a sphere for reference here. So we're going to see that the sphere, holy shit. Okay, so that's a little bit weird. We can kind of go outside of this, I suppose. So we can see that the sphere pops up and then the plane is moving down. And as it moves down, so I'll go in here and I will delete the sphere. We'll save all this. And of course, we'll go to my content browser real quick, save everything once again. And so what it's actually doing, and so if I go here to this autoplay and I click play, if you see that if you drag the blueprint up, you can kind of get some rising smoke or whatever, or it's a good way for you to fade it out. So if you need to fade something out like this, you can just drag it up and it'll kind of fade in. Just kind of depends on what you're wanting. You could also do like if you wanted the smoke to roll into the room, which I won't do it right now, but you could have like a material that pans across here and slowly reveals the smoke. And it only does it like once or something. You could drive that through the blueprint and kind of have it fading through. Another thing, which would be a cool thing for someone to try, I don't have very good modeling skills, which is why my team and I were building a FX mesher tool, which lets you create, complex FX meshes specifically for visual effects. That's coming soon, probably a couple months, once we're finished with some stuff with Vector Region, most likely. But either way, I'm digressing. If you had like a pipe or something, or a bunch of wrapped up planes, and they were coming out, you could have the smoke like falling out of this vent or something. Just kind of whatever you're really wanting to do. There's a number of things you could do with that. So, you could have stuff falling through with like a number of cylinders, and if you offset them a number of times, you could have some volumetric stuff falling out there. Of course, you could just have particles in general, 2D particles that are falling down to add to this. So there's a number of things you could do, and like I said, you could have a cylinder or like a disc that's kind of like faded out like this, and it's going radially, so there's smoke like pouring from somewhere. And then, you could do the whole flow map thing, and I wonder if there's a way to take like a camera and do a render target of this particular room and make a flow map. Or maybe you could do like some interactive flow map painting stuff for this. I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably make a part 2 to this tutorial showing how to do flow map stuff once I figure out the details behind it. I guess to give you a little goodbye, here is some blue smoke. Let me know if you guys have any comments or questions. Leave a like, give me a subscribe. I will have a link to our website, JangaFX.com, in the description. There will also be a link to the marketplace assets for this environment created by my good friend Mackenzie Shirk. You can see that it's quite an expensive map, and there's a lot to see, lots of assets, really cool, and you can recreate this exact scene if you wanted to. I believe that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Keep doing visual effects, keep practicing, and I'll see you when I'm doing more tutorials. Bye-bye.